My mother-in-law keeps inviting my husband's ex-girlfriend to all family gatherings to prove that he made the wrong choice. Things escalated when my husband finally lost his patience at his mother's birthday party and permanently cut her out of our lives. I'm 28 years old and have been married to Sean, also 28, for 2 years. Before that, we dated for 2 years, but we've known each other since high school. We only started dating a couple of years after college when we ran into each other at a restaurant, exchanged numbers, went on a few dates, and, well, here we are almost 4 years later. Before me, Sean dated another girl from our high school, Diana. She was a year younger than us and had been with him since middle school. Back then, Sean and I didn't interact much, but we had many mutual friends, so I often saw him with Diana. After graduation, we lost touch because he went to college in another state, and we barely saw each other. When we finally reconnected at that restaurant years later, I asked him about Diana. He told me they had broken up a year and a half prior. Diana had initiated the breakup because she wanted a different life and decided to take a break from relationships to explore the world. However, she made it clear that she would eventually come back to him. In reality, this meant she wanted to be free to date other men without guilt, while keeping Sean as a backup option. After the breakup, they remained friends, though Sean gradually distanced himself from her. By the time we met again, he had mostly moved on. I also started seeing him differently because he had changed a lot since high school. We quickly and effortlessly became friends after reconnecting 4 years ago, and our relationship has remained just as lighthearted and easygoing ever since. Sean told me he never had that with Diana. She always made him chase her because she believed it made her more desirable. She flirted with other guys, went out with friends for days without even checking in on him, and never considered how her behavior made him feel. He stayed with her because he was young and naive and felt he had to hold on to the relationship simply because they had been together for so long. Another reason was his mother Sharon, who was a huge fan of Diana. While they were dating, Diana spent a lot of time with my mother-in-law, who adored her. Whenever Diana visited, Sharon would praise her endlessly and act completely differently around her. Even after their breakup, Sharon continued inviting Diana to family events and holiday dinners. When Sean asked her to stop, she refused, saying she loved Diana very much and that despite the breakup, they were still good friends. So, in her mind, there was nothing wrong with continuing to invite her. They spoke almost every week and had a genuinely close relationship. This continued even after Sean and I started dating, and he introduced me to his family. At first I found it strange, and I still do. There was a reason I put up with it for so long. The first time Sean took me to meet his family was at Christmas 4 years ago. By then we had been dating for almost 8 months. Diana was there too, and she was absolutely awful to me the entire time. She made snide comments about my appearance, height, outfit, macoup everything. She did it in such a sly way that it all seemed like innocent teasing. But Sean knew exactly what she was doing and tried to stand up for me. However, Sharon immediately shut him down by asking if I had a problem with Diana's jokes, putting me in an awkward position. I realized that if I said I didn't like it, they would label me as insecure and humiliate me even more. So, I decided to act indifferent and simply said, I don't care. It was a petty move on my part, but as soon as I said it, I saw their expressions change. They looked both surprised and annoyed. When we got home, Sean apologized for his mother's and Diana's behavior and promised he wouldn't let his mom invite her again, but I told him not to intervene. I knew exactly who I was dealing with and didn't want to show any weakness, if you know what I mean. I didn't want Sharon and Diana to think they had intimidated me or made me feel insecure, because they hadn't. I felt like I had to prove that. I explained this to Sean, and though he was surprised, he stopped interfering in our little Cold War. From that day on, Diana was present at every single family gathering hosted by Sharon. Every time, it was the same sarcastic remarks, backhanded compliments, and constant attempts to bring up Diana and Sean's past, even when it was completely out of place, just to put me in an uncomfortable position. I endured all of this with composure, trying to appear as calm as possible. Sharon even hinted multiple times that Diana would have been a better daughter-in-law and a more suitable wife for Sean. It was infuriating, but I tried not to show it. As long as Sean was by my side, their words didn't matter to me. So, I let Sharon and Diana talk as much as they wanted. I didn't care. That's how I handled them for the past 4 years, and I intended to stick to the same approach for as long as necessary. I was determined not to be the first to lose my patience. Now, let me tell you what happened recently. 3 days ago, Sharon hosted a big birthday party for family and friends to celebrate turning 49. This year, Sean didn't want to attend because one of his colleagues was celebrating his engagement on the same day, and Sean wanted to be there instead. He had a good reason. His colleague would only get engaged once, and they were genuinely close friends. But Sharon pressured him relentlessly until he promised to come to her party, so we decided to go. As expected, Diana was invited. For some reason, she looked as if she were attending a red carpet event. Even Sharon was dressed extravagantly, though at least it was her birthday, so it made sense. Sean and I agreed to leave as soon as Sharon cut the cake so we could still make it to his colleague's engagement party. Around 5:30 p.m., my father-in-law brought out the cake. To our surprise, there were 2 cakes. One of them had the words, "Happy Almost Anniversary" written on it. Sean and I had no idea what that meant, and neither did the other guests, so we waited for an explanation from the birthday girl. But instead of Sharon, Diana took charge. To our shock, she grabbed Sean's hand and pulled him toward her. We were both so stunned that we couldn't react. Suddenly, all eyes were on Sean, and the room went silent. Then, Diana started talking. She reminded everyone that almost 10 years ago on Sharon's birthday, Sean had kneeled before her and given her a promise ring. They were both 18 at the time and about to leave for different colleges. She proudly showed off the same ring, still on her finger, and made sure everyone saw it. Then, she awkwardly hugged Sean, but he didn't hug her back. Sharon cheered, saying she was happy to let them have the spotlight to celebrate what could have been. The whole thing was so ridiculous that Sean and I just stood there, mouths open in disbelief, along with everyone else. For a few moments, no one spoke. One even knew how to react to such an absurd situation. Diana kept chatting away, laughing about how Sean was almost her husband, Sharon was almost her mother-in-law, and this was their almost anniversary, as if the guests didn't understand the joke. Then, Sharon cut the so-called anniversary cake and attempted to feed a piece to Sean. First, she gave a bite to Diana, then turned to Sean, holding a fork to his mouth. It was at that moment that something in him snapped. He pulled away from his mother just as she tried to feed him. Sharon looked shocked and asked him what was wrong. And then, Sean exploded. He started yelling at both of them for what they had done, unleashing years of bottled-up frustration right there at the party. He called them shallow, stupid, and selfish. He said he was ashamed that he had ever dated Diana, and even more ashamed to be related to Sharon by blood, because they were the most insufferable women he had ever known. Even I was taken aback by his outburst. Sean is usually incredibly calm. He rarely raises his voice or gets angry. It takes a lot to push him to that point. But Sharon, with Diana's help, had finally managed to do it. Once Sean was done, we walked out of the party and took a taxi straight to his colleague's engagement celebration. I tried to talk to him in the taxi, but he was visibly upset and said he didn't want to discuss his mother or his ex. So, I dropped the topic. By the time we arrived at the engagement party, his mood had significantly improved. He started chatting with his friends and colleagues, and I could see that he was feeling better. By the time we got home, he seemed much calmer. Thinking he might finally want to talk about what had happened at Sharon's party, I brought it up again. But to my surprise, he still didn't want to discuss it. Instead, he turned to me and said that, in some ways, I was also to blame for all of this. He admitted that Sharon and Diana had clearly tried to humiliate me with that cake. But then he reminded me that, for years, I had insisted he stay out of it, letting Sharon and Diana do whatever they wanted, just because I wanted to prove that I didn't care. He said I had turned it into a battle of egos, an attempt to prove my resilience, completely ignoring the fact that he was just as affected by it. Sean said no one ever considered how he felt about all of this, not his mother, not his ex, and not even me. He never expected support from them, but he did expect it from me. And in this situation, he felt that I had let him down by prioritizing my own pride over his well-being. That night, we had an argument. I told him he was being too harsh and unfair to me, but now, looking back with a clear head, I think he was right. For years, I made my husband stay silent while his mother continued inviting his ex to family gatherings just to humiliate me. So, let's pause this story for a moment. What do you think? Do you agree with Sean? Was I really at fault, or do you think I was not to blame? Now, let's continue. Update number 1. Tonight, I apologized to Sean. I read through a lot of comments, reflected on everything, and talked it over with a few friends. I came to the conclusion that I was wrong, and everything he said that day was true. I had put my own feelings above his. I was so focused on proving that Diana and Sharon's behavior didn't bother me that I never stopped to think about how it might have been affecting Sean. For his sake, I should have let him put an end to it if that's what he wanted. Instead, I forced him to suppress his feelings for years just so I could win some twisted mind game against people I didn't even care about. In the process, I jeopardized the only relationship that truly mattered to me. I really messed up, and I knew I had to fix it. Since the night of the party, Sean had been avoiding me. And, as usual, I pretended that it didn't bother me. That's my default reaction, and it has always been a problem. I act like nothing affects me, even when it does. I want people to see me as calm and unshakable, so I suppress my emotions. But I understand now that this is an incredibly unhealthy way to deal with problems. If I want to keep my marriage strong, I need to work on myself. Today, I skipped work, ordered dinner from Sean's favorite restaurant, and bought a chocolate cake with "I'm sorry" written on it. I set up a beautifully arranged table and created a romantic atmosphere because I know he loves sentimental gestures, like something out of a rom-com. And also, because I genuinely regret putting him through all of this. When he came home from work that evening, he was shocked to see what I had done. He forgave me within 15 minutes of walking through the door. We had an emotional reconciliation, and I broke down in tears because I had been terrified of losing him when he stopped talking to me. We talked everything through, and now things between us are back to normal. After admitting my mistake, I explained to him that I have a deep-seated need to appear relaxed and unaffected, like I don't care about anything. And I do this for absolutely no reason, just to seem cool and not show vulnerability to others. That's the real cause of this whole mess. Sean understood and appreciated that I acknowledged this and wanted to work on it instead of just burying my feelings. He also apologized for being harsh with me. After dinner, we finally discussed what had happened at Sharon's party. I hadn't heard from either her or Diana since that night, and honestly, after my argument with Sean, I had completely pushed them out of my mind. But Sharon had been bombarding Sean with messages, trying to force him to apologize to Diana, who was supposedly heartbroken and devastated by his behavior. I had to put in serious effort not to roll my eyes as I read her messages, filled with guilt-tripping and manipulative nonsense. Sharon tried to spin the entire situation as if the cakes and the whole almost anniversary thing had just been a harmless joke with no hidden agenda. But I don't believe that for a second. We're talking about a married man here. They should have had enough common sense to realize how inappropriate and disrespectful that was toward me. They did it on purpose to humiliate me. And now, they were trying to dismiss our feelings, acting like we were the ones overreacting and making Sean feel guilty for finally standing up to them. Their audacity was just laughable. Sean ignored all of Sharon's messages. After reading them together, we decided to cut off contact with her entirely. We were done with her games and didn't want to deal with this anymore. Update number 2. 3 days ago, Sean and I blocked both Sharon and Diana on all social media platforms. Sean also told his father that he no longer wanted to have any contact with his mother. His father respected his feelings but refused to get involved. He loves his wife and knows he can't go against her, so he completely distanced himself from the situation, just as he had for the past several years. I don't like how my father-in-law handled things, but there's nothing I can do about it. The past 2 days had been peaceful, but today, out of nowhere, Sean called me and said he was rushing to the hospital. Apparently, his mother had fallen down the stairs and broken her leg. His uncle from his mother's side was the one who called and informed him. As soon as Sean heard the news, he left immediately. I left too, and we arrived at the hospital at almost the same time. Before we even managed to step inside, we were stopped by Sharon completely unharmed. She and Diana had set up an ambush for us in the parking lot, admitting that this was the only way to get Sean's attention since he had blocked them everywhere. They clearly hadn't expected me to show up as well, but they ignored me completely and started talking to Sean as if they had done nothing wrong. Diana tried to explain that everything she had done at the party was just a prank and that she never intended to hurt him. Sharon backed her up. Sean listened for a while, and then, right to their faces, he told both his mother and his ex-girlfriend to go to hell. Then, he walked away with me. As we were getting into our cars, Sharon started screaming at us, but we didn't stick around to listen. I'm sure she was cursing us, but it didn't matter anymore. She lied just to see Sean again, and I can't think of anything more manipulative than that. Sean was exhausted, so he went home, while I had to return to work. While I was at work, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Sharon. She screamed at me for about 15 seconds before I managed to hang up. I had answered out of reflex, caught off guard, and all I heard was a stream of profanities. It was absurd. I had never influenced Sean's decisions. She brought this on herself, not me. In the end, I blocked her and tried to move on with my day. When I finally got home around 6 p.m., Sean and I had a long talk. He told me that he had also blocked all the other relatives who were close to his mother, including his uncle, because it had become clear that Sharon would do anything to manipulate him into forgiving her. This was the only thing we could do for now. They weren't threatening us or stalking us, so getting a restraining order wasn't an option. Sean also spoke to his father and told him everything that had happened that day, but once again, his father refused to get involved. That was his choice. Sean still loves his father, so I kept my thoughts to myself. But honestly, I don't think his dad is a great parent. At the very least, he could have talked to his wife and stood up for his son, but he wouldn't even do that. Sean respects his father, but his father has never taken his side when it came to Sharon. I stayed quiet out of respect for their relationship, but if I were to speak my mind, I'd have a lot to say about how dysfunctional this family is where everyone only cares about themselves. I'll never understand how Sean even came from a family like this. Update number 3. It's been over a week since my last update. Yesterday, we decided to file for a restraining order against Sharon and Diana because of what they did to me, or rather, tried to do. A few days ago, on Thursday, I was leaving work. I usually stop by a coffee shop near my office every Thursday to treat myself to a latte. That day, I was planning to do the same, but the moment I stepped inside, Diana and Sharon got up from their seats and marched toward me, coffees in hand. Before I even had time to process what was happening, they threw their coffee in my face. Then, Diana scooped whipped cream from her cup and smeared it into my hair. I was completely stunned and just stood there, frozen, while the barista rushed over to help me clean up. The staff did everything they could to assist me, and I'm so grateful to them for dropping everything to help me. I also appreciate the other customers who patiently waited while I tried to clean myself up. My clothes were sticky and stained, my hair looked awful, but by the end, I felt a lot better. Several people checked to make sure I was okay, and one customer even asked if I wanted to call the police. I said yes. I filed a report against Diana and Sharon. However, they got off with just a fine because it was considered a minor offense since they didn't physically harm me. The only real damage was my ruined work outfit, which I'll never be able to wear again because of a massive brown coffee stain on the front. Still, I made sure to file the complaint. It's now on record, and that could cause them problems in the future. Sean initially wanted to make the incident public by posting about it online, warning people to stay away from Diana and his mother. But he changed his mind when he realized that all I wanted was to move on without giving them any more attention. To be honest, this whole thing really shook me. I know it might sound silly, but it made me think this could have ended with more than just coffee in my face. They knew my routine from social media. They knew where I worked. They knew where I lived. If they had really wanted to hurt me, they could have. This could have ended much worse. Sean and I have had a good financial year, and we were already considering moving. Now, after what happened, we're definitely moving. We've also been thinking about starting a family soon, and we'll be trying for a baby in the near future. But Sean's parents will never meet our children. After his father again refused to get involved even after the coffee shop attack, Sean had a major falling out with him and cut ties completely. As for me, I feel relieved knowing I'll never have to see these people again. What do you think about this whole situation? Personally, I believe Sean should have ended things with his mother and Diana a long time ago. It's clear that his wife wanted to handle it her own way, but in the end, That wasn't a good enough reason. He should have ignored her opinion and shut this down years ago because, in the end, she didn't prove anything to anyone. Diana and Sharon just laughed at her. That's it. What did she prove? Not that she's strong, but that she's weak. That she was too scared to say a word back, so they kept walking all over her. And since her husband also stayed silent, it meant they could walk all over him too. In the end, she didn't just make herself look bad, she made her husband look bad too. Maybe if he had handled this sooner, he wouldn't have had to cut ties with his parents completely. Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support means the world to me. Take care.